How's your bottle? Oh, he smashed it in! It's Berbatov! It's brilliant! United lead with 4 minutes to go. What a ball to pick him out! And what a finish! It's flying! What a turnaround by Manchester United! Ronaldo! It's 3-2! Nobody does it better than Manchester United! Welcome to Manchester United! Anthony Martial! What a save! That is brilliant! How has he reached that?
Hello and welcome to the second episode of the United Devils podcast. My name is Arjun, and over the series of podcasts we will be discussing everything Manchester United and the Premier League in general. In this episode we will be discussing Manchester United's pre-season games, our predictions and what effect they could have on the season to come. With me today are three of the United Devils writers, and welcome back to Arian and Suraj, who were on the pilot episode on the transfer window, and a warm welcome to our newest panellist, Joe. Why don't you say a little bit about yourself?
Like you said, my name's Joe. I'm 33 years old. I'm a lifelong United supporter. Been a season ticket holder since 2007, and I've been writing for the United Devils since about last November.
Thanks, Joe. So we begin with the pre-season squad that United released on Sunday. So notable absentees like Fred and Darmy are not part of the squad because of personal reasons. Tim Fosu-Mensah and Dean Henderson were also absent, with Fosu-Mensah returning from injury sustained when he was playing for Fulham, and Dean Henderson is linked with a move away from the club. Alexis Sanchez did not travel with the squad either after suffering an injury in the Copa America, but was reported that he was not going to join the squad anyway as he was getting a deserved break. But what was more interesting is that Romelu Lukaku and Paul Pogba were both on the flight despite being linked with the Serie A. We spoke in depth about them last week, so I won't dwell on them too long. But Arian, while Lukaku has stated he will remain a professional while his future at United is resolved, Paul Pogba has made no such promise. And after that video of him signing shirts looking rather bored and half-hearted, do you think he's all but ready to leave? Or is this an overhyped story by his agent in the press again?
Yeah, that's what I was talking about in the article that I just wrote about the body language of him and Lukaku, because I feel like that's really important to see if he is ready to be professional, or if he's going to throw his toys out of the pram and force a move away. But also I saw the video, I don't know if you guys saw, of him and Lingard, the thing that was cut short by some media outlets, and then there was a full version of MUTV of them just joking around. But I hope it's just a hyped up story by... I hope we're just looking into it too much, that he was looking half-hearted with the autograph signing and stuff. But I feel like he's one of those players that if his head is not fully in it and he's not fully committed, then he might be more of a negative to the team rather than a positive. So I hope that in the next few weeks, when we start seeing the preseason games, that we will see exactly whether his head is here and he wants to stay, or if he's set on leaving this summer.
I'll ask you this. Romelu Lukaku ditched Mino Raiola, I think last season, got a new agent. Do you think that could be something that Paul Pogba should use? I mean, Ferguson himself said he hated Mino Raiola, and that was one of the big reasons why Pogba left United in the first place. Something he should consider doing.
I think so, because I'm not sure when this was exactly, but I read something, or some player that was formerly with him said it in a book or something, that Raiola is one of those agents that he is a businessman in it for himself, and that he really thrives on getting the biggest agent fees from transfers and stuff. So whenever he sees a move on the horizon that can benefit him, he hints it to his players as if that they should maybe look for a new challenge or something, so he can keep earning the money. So I think that from over time, from even Sir Alex saying it and stuff, I feel like as good of an agent as he is, credit where it's due, I feel like maybe he's not the best for players that are looking for commitment, or for the clubs that are looking for a certain player to commit. So, and it seems like ever since Lukaku switched over to the Rock Nation, that it's just everything around him kind of settled down, despite those rumors. But there's not as much talk out of Raiola and stuff. So yeah, maybe that's the move. I can't see Pogba leaving him though either.
Well, yeah, we said we were not going to dwell too much on them, so thank you, Arian. Moving on to the others, so Dean Henderson. Joe, can you see him leaving Sheffield United instead of staying as United's backup?
Yeah, well, I mean, I watched quite a lot of Championship football last year, and I mean he was fantastic for Sheffield United. To be honest, I think he was definitely one of their linchpins in their promotional campaign. Quite a surprising promotional campaign as well. Obviously, I don't think people would have predicted Sheffield United to have got promoted at the start of last season in the Championship. I mean, it's one of those interesting things. I think if De Gea, it all depends on De Gea, doesn't it? I mean, if we lose David De Gea, then I don't know. I think we could see a place for Dean Henderson. I think he's a very good goalkeeper, actually. I mean, he didn't have the best Euro under-21 championships, but then again, neither did a lot of the English players in that team. So I think it's a bit unfair to judge him on that. But I do think if we keep De Gea, which I think is looking more and more likely this season, then I think the best thing for him is actually to go back to Sheffield United, a club that he knows well, a club where he's settled, somewhere where he knows he's going to play well, and he's going to get Premier League football. I mean, his development's really interesting, actually. The first loan move he made was to a team in League Two called Grimsby Town. He was there for, I think he did about 6 months there, and there was a fallout between himself and the managers. It's something quite well precedented within Grimsby Town, because I actually know someone who's a season ticket holder there. Next loan move was then to go to Shrewsbury Town, who at the time were in League One. Then the next season he went to Sheffield United, who were in Championship. He's had that nice sort of steady progression. He's made his way through the leagues. But it's no coincidence that every club he's been at was actually successful. I mean, albeit the Grimsby Town season, I think he was a team there who finished probably lower mid-table. So I think there's a good goalkeeper there, and obviously you want to keep good young English players at the club, something that we're looking to do at the moment. So I think if De Gea's there, I think it's good for him to move on again. If De Gea goes, then there might be a chance for him to stay at the club and actually have quite a prominent role at the club.
Thank you. And then for Timothy Fosu-Mensah, he had that great breakthrough season under Louis van Gaal. He had some brief appearances in the Europa League under Jose Mourinho and sort of fell off the grid after that, playing for Palace and for Fulham. Do you think he's still got a future at the club? Or
I think Fosu-Mensah is a difficult one, because for me, I think he's been a little bit his development's been a little bit interrupted maybe by injury. I think he's had a couple of injuries at the respective clubs that you just mentioned. He was also part of that Palace team, wasn't he, who I think lost their first 4 games under Frank de Boer, was that right? And I think he tried to play in the system that de Boer obviously played, that Dutch system, and I think everybody was quite excited to see how he would do under a Dutch coach in the Premier League, but obviously it didn't work out for de Boer, and as a consequence it didn't work out for Fosu-Mensah either. But I like him because I think he's quite versatile and he can play a number of different positions, but I do feel that he can't justify coming into our first team squad at the moment, because his performances whilst being out on loan haven't given us any indication that he's ready to play for Manchester United. He was part of a Fulham squad that ultimately went down, who had one of the worst defensive records ever known in the Premier League. So I think it's going to maybe take another loan move for him to prove himself, but we don't know. Maybe he'd be one of those players that will kick on if he was in the United team, rather than maybe in a team that's struggling in the Premier League. I don't think they'll cash in this year. I think they'll maybe give him another season, maybe out on loan, and then they'll take it from there, see how he does.
Thank you. Then we'll go to Alexis Sanchez. He was doing very well for Chile in the Copa America. We talked a lot about him last week and how he should come on pre-season, see how well he'll do. But his most recent injury has seemingly taken him out of that, so he's got to leave surely, hasn't he?
Yeah, I think it's difficult with Alexis Sanchez, because he's one of those players. I remember last season thinking every weekend, you see him in the team and you think, this will be the weekend he kicks on. He's too good of a player to have sort of become poor overnight, but that's the thing. He does seem to have all of a sudden become poor overnight, and I honestly don't know what's happened to Alexis Sanchez. I don't know whether the motivation to be a good footballer has gone because of the money that he's now on. I don't know whether that's the issue with him, or whether he's just never settled to life at Manchester United. I don't know. And you said he played brilliantly in the Copa America, and he has had some great games, and his stats are quite good from that tournament. But you wonder whether he's playing like that because he's trying to prove to Solskjaer that he can be a United player, or whether he's actually trying to put himself in the shop window. But I think either way, I think United are going to have a real tough time getting him off the books, because obviously his wages are unprecedentedly high. You know what I mean? We've never paid that sort of wages to a player before, so wherever he goes, he's going to have to be prepared to take a wage cut. And it's very difficult to see him go into some of the top European clubs based on his performances at United over the last season and a half. So I think, you know, it's a difficult situation for United. It's probably one that they would like to see him leave, but actually making him leave or getting him to leave will be difficult, because it's been difficult to get any players out this summer, which has also been quite disappointing.
So, Raj, do you agree with that? Do you think maybe we should sort of see how he starts and then in January move him on?
Like he just said that because of his wage bill, you're going to have trouble finding clubs that actually want him, and given his past season, a lot of clubs are going to think that he's past it and he's not going to score anymore. But I personally still want to see Alexis Sanchez at United. He's a top player, he scored tons of goals in the Premier League, and I don't think anything's going to change that. There's clearly a top player in there, and it's up to the coaching staff and Solskjaer to actually untap that potential. He's been quite unlucky with injuries and whatnot, but the only issue I think with keeping Sanchez at the club is his wage. His wage bill has completely ruined the club's wage structure, and that explains Herrera leaving and Rashford on £200,000, increasing up to £300,000. So if Alexis Sanchez agrees to take a pay cut, then I'd welcome him, because that's going to serve two purposes. First, that we get to keep a player like Alexis for a cheaper price, and second is it sends out a message to all the other players that if you don't play well, your wages are going to get slashed as well. So no one's completely in it for the money.
Thanks. Okay, we're going to have to press on now. We've gone over some of the players, and we'll talk about the opponents now during the pre-season. So United travelled to Australia they landed yesterday or this morning, and they're playing Perth Glory in the first game on the 13th, and then we'll play again bitter rivals, Leeds United, and honestly could be either one of the most docile games of football with like a 4-5-0 win or whatever, or one of the most heated matches United have had in a while, because you don't know how Leeds are going to be. If you remember the playoffs against Derby, there were 2 red cards, there were scraps, and even the last few games of the season, there was that controversial goal that Bielsa let them concede against Aston Villa, which basically kept them at 3rd place and made them play in the playoffs. Then United will travel to Singapore to face Inter Milan in the first game of the International Champions Cup. Then Shanghai to face Tottenham Hotspurs, and then back to the UK, their final game against AC Milan, just 8 days before United face Chelsea in the first game of the season. Each game offers a different challenge for United and should build up their fitness, match sharpness and momentum going into the first game. But one thing to notice is that this is the fewest number of pre-season matches since 2015. Is this a mistake, since United's fitness has been a problem, or is this perhaps Solskjaer's solution to it?
I'm not quite sure. I mean, the standard of games have struck me a little bit, to be honest. I know when they go to these countries, they tend to play a local team as part of the tour. They don't always play, obviously, prestigious teams. I mean, the first couple of games for United, I think, obviously you don't want to lose those games, and they'll want to obviously get positive results, but mainly they'll be looking to come through those games looking for, you know, an increase in work rate from a lot of the games from last season. You know, they'll be looking at the output of stats like the running stats, you know, how much energy and that people have used, and just generally looking for a baseline fitness level that they can take forward into the rest of the games. I mean, the other thing that strikes me about the pre-season as well is that I'm never a big fan of playing teams who are in your league either. I mean, I do understand why they do it, because obviously there's a tournament going on called the International Champions Cup, and there happens to be some of the same teams in that you will play in the league this season. And also there's obviously money there to be made from a marketing point of view, but I just feel there's plenty of teams you can play during pre-season. I don't think it's a good idea to always play somebody who's going to be a direct rival next season. Hopefully, you know, Tottenham will be for us. You know, hopefully we'll be at that end of the table and pushing them all the way. So I'm a bit dubious about that. But I just think the first two games will all be about, getting the players out there, trying to get the fitness level, obviously avoiding injury, and we've got a lot of young players on this tour, so it'll give Ollie more of an opportunity to see what they can do in a team that won't be absolutely full of stars. I mean, the young players will be playing quite a vital role in all the games, I would imagine, this tour, looking at the squad that's put out there. So.
Right. So it might be a mistake in a different sense in the sense. What I mean to say is that we're traveling more miles than any of the other top 6 sides. So, for example, Liverpool are only traveling half the distance that we are. And why I think that affects us is because Solskjaer's game plan involves a lot of running because he likes to play high pressing style and whatnot, like we saw in the most successful part of his reign. And then reports that his training sessions include a lot of running and sprinting, those type of activities, and probably explains why we signed Daniel James as well, because of his speed. And so I'm okay with us not playing too many games because we'll avoid unnecessary injuries. And at the same time, we're also playing quality opposition in those few games that we do play. But we do need to use those games effectively when it comes to tactics, in the sense to try out new formations, new starting lineups. Solskjaer kept stressing the importance of preseason, so let's see how he actually uses it when it actually comes to the first few games.
Yeah, my only thing with the less games, which I like, is that even though there is a bit more traveling involved, more miles, the games are a bit more spaced out, and they usually are when we're like in the same location in like the USA, and they're just traveling from city to city playing games like every 2 or 3 days. Here, there seems like there's more time for recovery, so even if the training regime is really strict, like Solskjaer wants to focus on fitness, they have a bit more time for recovery, even though like it is traveling and jet lag and all that stuff, but you're not playing all the time and you have a bit more time to recover. And then, so it starts off easy and then builds up gradually like you want it to build up just before the season starts. So I'm happy with it, and I trust Ollie that he knows what he's doing. I really want to see how the team does after he has his full preseason with them.
Yeah, just quickly building on your point that there's going to be kind of larger gaps in between games. Do you think that might be because Ollie wants to create some more kind of sort of team building exercises, things to kind of boost morale within the group, make them a unit like they were when they were playing under Alex Ferguson?
I would hope so, because like since you're not playing all the time and you have to travel a lot, that means you're in together as a group. So I would hope so, because clearly, even though the team spirit seems to be fine for the most part, I feel like the team isn't like you said, like a unit, like a kind of a all for one kind of a team thing. So yeah, I hope so, and I hope that like he can sort out what the situations with whatever players are on the fence, whether to stay or leave in that time, and that once we come to that last preseason game just before the Chelsea game, that the team is all set on the same page and ready to go.
All right, brilliant. Thanks very much. Now we're going to move on to the individual games. So the first preseason game is against Perth Glory. They just won their first A-League title this season, and their first domestic trophy since 2004. They did actually play Chelsea last summer and lost just 1-0, and seem to be on the rise this year following the appointment of their new manager at the start of this season, and then they won the title as well. If United don't take this team seriously, Siraj, do you think this could be a trap?
I don't mind us losing preseason games as long as we, learn something from each game and the players just get a few minutes in them before we can actually start taking on the other teams. So other teams in the sense, Spurs and AC Milan and Inter and whatnot. So I think these beating Perth Glory shouldn't be our top priority. That said, I also don't know a lot about Perth Glory, so but I do know one thing, is that Manchester United have the potential to lose to them as well. So, yeah, another Cardiff is possible, but I wouldn't be as bothered about us losing to Perth. And like you said, because they won the title, obviously they're on a different level. Because when a big club comes to your town, you just want to go all out and give them a hard time. Whereas we're just trying to get minutes in us.
Thanks. So we'll go on to predictions now. I'm gonna predict 4-0 win. Good game to start with. I think Daniel James will play and he'll, show his qualities first time round.
I think since it's the first game, it's going to be a case of like 45 minutes for the first 11 and then 45 minutes for a completely different 11. So I think it's going to be one of those. But with that being said, whenever we go on tour and we play those local teams first, we're usually pretty comfortable, even though we're like rusty and they may be motivated and stuff. But I think it's going to be a comfortable one. But since it's probably going to be 11 different 11s in each half, I'm going to go for a 4-1.
I think I'll go for a 3-1 to United. Rashford getting the first goal, and we concede from a set piece, like how I think we did against San Jose.
Yeah, well, I was gonna say 3-1 as well, but just for the same reason as maybe Arian said. I think these games can be disjointed due to the amount of changes that you make, and obviously it's the first run out for a lot of the players. So, but as you said, 3-1, I'll go for 3-0 instead.
Excellent. So now on to Leeds United, which they'll face in the same stadium as Perth Glory. Leeds this season seem set to automatically return to the Premier League after a long period of 15-year absence. As with 4 games to go, they were second place. They bottled it though with shock results, ended up 3rd place, and then they played in the semi-final playoffs to Derby County. They got knocked out. This has been a bitter rivalry for decades and has, caused a fair few fights in its history. Could this have an impact on the game, Joe?
Definitely. I mean, I've actually, whether you want to say fortunate or unfortunate, I've been to a Leeds United, Manchester United game actually at Ellen Road. I'm trying to think how long it would have been. It would have been about. It wasn't a league game; it was a League Cup game. I remember United won 3-0. I think it would have been around about 2010 because Berbatov played and scored. So, but anyway, yeah. So, and I know firsthand there's still a lot of rivalry there. There was a lot of trouble before the game with fans and a lot of trouble after the game as well. It comes down to more than football, it's a geography thing as well. You've got the fact of the counties that they both represent, Yorkshire and Lancashire. There's a lot of rivalry away from sport there as well, that the people don't necessarily like the people from there. So it runs very deep. So whether we'll see that so much out in Australia, I'm not sure. They're 2 very well supported clubs, so I would imagine that Leeds United have a fair few supporters in Australia. I wouldn't rule that out for sure. Perth, where they're playing, it's an area where there's a lot of expats, so a lot of English people actually live out in Perth, moved there from England to Australia. So yeah, I would imagine that both clubs will be supported well, but I think for the players, it's just again it's the second game of the tour. I would imagine Leeds maybe a little bit in front of United in terms of preparation, because I think their league starts 1 or 2 weeks before ours. So I would assume that they may be a game or 2 ahead of United. So from a fitness point of view, they might be a little bit sharper, but obviously United should have more quality. Although I was very impressed with Leeds last season. I know you touched on there, but they were so close to promotion. When you watch them last season, it makes you wonder how they didn't get promoted, because they did play some really good stuff under Bielsa. But I think United they'll have had a game under their belt as well. It'll be interesting to see whether they put a strong team out for that one, or whether they give some other players an opportunity. But I think either way, United should be alright, and I think generally the game should have a friendly atmosphere about it, to be honest.
Thanks. Arian, I'll turn to you now. I'll say, do you think that playing Leeds will give United a better idea of playing against the newly promoted teams? As last year, and actually for the last few years, United have really struggled to beat some of the teams that have they ought to have done, such as Brighton, Huddersfield, Cardiff at the end of the season, and Wolves in the FA Cup, and straight afterwards as well in the Premier League?
Because it's preseason and it's so early, like not even it's going to be just about mid-July. I'm going to say no, but also because of the fact that they are a championship team and Bielsa did have them playing like a Premier League team for most of last season. I think it's going to be a good experience to get in on the. I think looking at Bielsa as a manager, I would say that he might like have, because all the United players right now and most of the Leeds players will not know of the United Leeds traditions and their rivalry. So I think a manager like Bielsa and maybe even Solskjaer will remind them of what it is and then how long they haven't played. So even though it's a friendly, it might be a little more competitive, even though it's on the early stages. But I would hope so that they're not going to look at the game lightly, especially because we've had so much problems with the newly promoted side. So it could be a good test, a good start, a nice little step up from Perth to ramp up the preseason. So yeah, hopefully it's a good test for them.
Yeah, I think it might be best to steer Marcus Rojo away from that game then. So yeah, for predictions for this game, I'm going to say it's going to be close. I'm going to go for 2-1 with the possibility of making it 3-1 in the dying stages.
I think because it's English versus English team, I'm going to say 3-1.
Yeah, again, somebody else has taken my prediction. I'd imagine I think it'll be a close game like yourself, Arjun. I can see it being maybe a 2-1 myself, but I'll say 2-0. I'm confident that we're going to get off to a good start with our defence. Don't ask me why I'm confident, but yeah, I feel like it might be 2-0.
I had 2-1 predicted as well, because Leeds, we play Leeds second, but Leeds play us third. We're the third team on the preseason, and we just lost Pontus Jansson, so I think we'll be pretty shaky at the back. So I think we can exploit that. Changing my prediction to 2-0.
Alright, thank you. So then after this point, United will begin their International Champions Cup matches and start with Inter Milan in Singapore. So now Inter are a very... Inter are going to be quite close to United all summer and were certainly more successful than United last season. They finished fourth in Serie A and will play Champions League football for the second season in a row. They have quality that differs significantly from United's previous two opponents, with Lauro Martinez, Ivan Perisic, Raja Nainggolan, Stefan de Vrij, Samir Handanovic, and who knows, maybe even Lukaku will be an Inter player and face up against Manchester United. Even though it's so early in the pre-season, Arion, do you think that Inter are the better team than United? And if so, is there a way that United can win this game?
I don't think Inter are a whole lot better than us, considering they are in a one-team league, two-team league at most, and they came third or fourth last season. So I think that Inter right now could be somewhere on United's level, I think, and who knows? Yeah, as you said, maybe Lukaku will be an Inter player by then. But what I like about this preseason, is that we're not playing all those top teams like we did in the past, like all the Real Madrids, Barcelonas, and stuff. But it seems like it's a level in between. So maybe not as much is going to be demanded of the players physically and stuff, and they will have more time to come into the Premier League fitness and all that stuff. So I feel like I think we can win it. I wouldn't be surprised if we won most of our preseason games this season. But like as Sarah said earlier, I'm not really going to be mad if we lose some, as long as we are completely ready for the start of the Premier League. But I don't think that Inter are better than us, especially with the squad depth that we're bringing there. So I think it's going to be a good game, though. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, Suraj, even if they don't win, is it important that? Will it show signs that United are so far off the pace that they're not even going to be contenders for top four and will be battling for maybe even seventh place with Leicester and Wolves getting deals done?
Again, that's a tough one to call because in Van Gaal's first season, we beat Real Madrid in the ICC Cup, and we ended up finishing fourth because Liverpool messed up and Real went on to win the Champions League that season. So I won't jump the gun and make predictions for the season based on preseason games. For me, I just want to see how Solskjaer would set up the team against a top opposition, how he'd want us to go about it, what is his plan, what is his approach, which players does he select for which role. I mean, if we again see Mata on the right wing, that's just something that you take away from the game. That's not an experiment, that's a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to see what is he trying to implement.
All right, thank you. So then we'll go for predictions for this game. For me, I think it's going to be a draw. I think it's the first big opponent. I think it will be a draw, and I think, United have got good penalty takers. I think it will be a win in a penalty shootout.
I think if I could just quickly tag along to what Sarah said, that this preseason is going to be mostly about seeing how we set up and how we choose to play, especially as the games get into those bigger teams. I want to see if we're going to try and control the ball like we did for the most part under Sir Alex back in what Solskjaer keeps referring as the days that he wants to bring back. So I want to see if we're going to try and take control, even though it's preseason, against like the Tottenhams, the Inters, the AC Milans, or if we're going to be setting up for purely counter-attack like we did in most of the big games last season. But my prediction is going to be 2-1 United.
I think we need to be worried though, because didn't Romelu Lukaku say they got the best coach in the world? So I'm not sure. I don't think pre-season. It's so difficult to think. On paper, I think there's a lot of similarities. I think they're on a similar level, like people have said. I'll go along with that, but I've got a sneaky suspicion that United might just nick this 1-2-1. I think.
I actually had a chance to go for this game, but it didn't work out because of logistical reasons or whatever. But I think I'll go for a 1-1 draw. I'm assuming that Inter don't sort out their striker problem by the time we play this game, and it's going to play out to be a 1-1. If they do get a striker, then probably a 2-2 or a 3-2. And if it goes to penalties, we win it.
All right, thank you. Then after Inter, United travelled to Shanghai to play Spurs. And Spurs had a really weird season last season. When Man City were doing badly in December and Tottenham were in the title race at one point, they were above City, actually, I believe, at the end of December. But then by January, they got beaten by Wolves and United at Wembley. And then they missed out on the Carabao Cup final, got knocked out on penalties to Chelsea. And then they got knocked out of the FA Cup by Crystal Palace quite early on in the competition. But then ended up in fourth and the Champions League final, and honestly could have won that game. And this has to be one of the most crucial games United have in the pre-season, as it will test their mettle against truly, class players and a very, very good manager. A win here would certainly be a boost ahead of such an important game against Chelsea, don't you think, Joe?
Yeah, I do agree with you to a certain extent. There's no getting away from it. Tottenham are a great side, and I'm amazed every season that they do as well as they do with their sort of their net spend and the way they go about the transfer market. I mean, you listed all their achievements last season. Let's not forget they didn't sign a single player. So that makes it even more impressive. I mean, they've obviously strengthened their midfield with the signing of Ndombele. Not a player that I know very well. I know it's a player that United have been linked with, and I hear he's a very good player. So, when you look at their midfield, if they can keep the likes of Christian Eriksen, they're going to be really strong next season. So in that regard, I think it will be a good test for United. But like I touched on earlier, I'm always a little bit dubious about teams playing each other from the Premier League, and it will be interesting to see how both teams approach it, whether they will go all out with their strongest teams, or whether they'll choose to keep their cards a little closer to their chest and maybe, not give too much away ahead of the season. Because like I say, if you look at where both teams are at the moment, it's very likely that the two teams could be very close to each other next season in the table come the end of the season. So we'll see.
Yeah. I'll ask, Suraj, I'll ask you this. As Joe said, we were linked with Tanguy and Dombele. £63 million, he's Spurs' record signing. Is that a big miss? Is that a really big miss that United should have bought him?
It's a very, very big miss. I've been watching Ndombele for a while now, ever since the first reports came out, and he's an amazing player. He can replace Matic, he can replace Herrera both. That's the best thing, and we need a defensive midfielder. And if we can get him playing alongside even McTominay, I think he'll really boost our defense. We should have been all over that deal. I don't know how we missed out.
All right, thank you. So we'll go for predictions again for this. I think United will turn up to this one, and this will be a huge boost. I think the games before will, they'll knit the team together, and I think this is a game where they're going to show up, and I'm going to go for a 2-1 win.
I think looking at the fact that it's going to be the fourth game of the season, or the fourth game of the preseason, is that the fitness levels are going to be higher and higher. So this is the first 11 is probably going to get deeper into the second half in terms of playing time. So we might see, this might be the first game where we might see something of what Solskjaer is thinking of in terms of the start of the season. So it should be a good game, I think, and I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw and penalties.
I'm going to go for a similar game to what we saw in the league, so I think I'll go for United to win 1-0 and for De Gea to make 50,000 saves again, like he did in the Wembley game last season. So, no, I just think that, I think as great as that result was last season at Wembley in the league, and it came in sort of in the midst of this great run that Solskjaer had that, you can't get away from it. Tottenham had taken their chances, they could have won that game quite easily. So I do see them probably being maybe the better side again, but I just think United tend to do quite well against Tottenham, so I'll stick with the 1-0.
I have trouble predicting a United loss, so I'm going for a 1-0 United win.
And then we go on to United's final game against AC Milan in the Principality Stadium in Cardiff. And Milan seem to be all over the place in the last few years. They've had managers leaving, European complications, and really awful form, and have left this once great club in disarray. Seeming unfortunately familiar at this point in time, but AC was supposed to be in the Europa League with Manchester United, but because of financial fair play issues, they've been banned this year from all European competitions. Well, demonstrate the higher class of opposition United will face in the competition. But is it more reasonable for United to do what Jose did for them in 2016-17 and win the Europa League to gain access to the Champions League football, and then win a trophy on the side as well? Or is it too early to put all of our eggs in the Europa League basket?
You don't put all the eggs into the Europa basket, but you want to go for it because it's a trophy. We celebrated the trophy when we won it under Jose, but also gives the access to Champions League football. But regardless of how we're doing in the transfer market right now, we go into every season expecting us to challenge for the league. So I think you have to prioritize the Premier League and then keep playing well, keep fielding good teams, but give the youth players a chance in the Europa League, in my opinion. So that's a good competition to mold 2 or 3 of them into the starting 11, and then give some players rest because it's Thursday, Sunday for the Premier League. But also speaking of Milan, I think it's a good tactic. I don't know if it was planned like that to put them as one of our last games of preseason, but they haven't been playing that well under Gattuso last season, so it could be a good game for our starting 11 that will play the first game of the season to go out there and make a statement against the team that I think is weaker than us right now. And all the goals that Piontek scored last season, he was kind of feeding off of scraps, but they weren't playing that good. Not that they weren't too tactically sound. So I think this could be a good game for United to go out and make a statement and boost the confidence before the season starts.
Yeah, thank you. Suraj, we talked in depth about Piontek last time, and he will likely be in the AC side that face United. And just wondering about our own players. Do our best centre-backs, such as Victor Lindelof, Eric Bailly, and maybe even Axel Tuanzebe, if he doesn't go on loan to Aston Villa, do they have what it takes to stop this goal machine?
Piatek is a player that isn't afraid of getting bodied by defenders. He's the exact opposite of Robin Van Persie. Van Persie spins defenders around and finds space, but Piatek is very comfortable running with the defender. So, in fact, he actually relishes them. So, in a Lindelof versus Piatek battle, I'm particularly interested in seeing how that one pans out, because both are at the exact same point in their careers, in the sense they're just entering their peak and they're not world-class status yet, but maybe after a few good seasons they will be. Lindelof is very smart, and he is one of the highlights for me last season. I'm really looking forward to see what he is going to produce for us next season. Bai will be a mess because Piatek loves defenders who overcommit, and Bai is guilty of doing that on multiple occasions. Tuanzebe will be interesting because Piatek is the perfect exposure for him, to show him how global football is after playing a season with the Championship. Now he'll see what proper strikers can do to you. Also, can I add something about Piatek here?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So, we signed Ronaldo after we played Sporting Lisbon in a friendly. So,
that was actually my next question. Would it be an audition?
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Even if it's an audition, just pick him up.
Yeah. Do you think that having a pre-season game just 8 days before the season begins is wise? If someone is really badly injured in the friendly cup competition, like Herrera was last season against Bayern Munich, they won't have time to recover for the start of the season. It's a big game. It's against Chelsea. They've got a new manager, someone who's going to try and bring a bit more oomph into the club. And so should United take this game quite lightly and work on fitness and mental preparation, or should they try and win a little bit of silverware before the season begins?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think to answer your first part of the question, the gap between the last friendly and the league season, 8 days, I don't really have too much of an issue with that. I mean, yeah, you may pick up an injury, but they could pick up an injury against Perth Glory that a player could be out for 2 or 3 months, and he missed that first game anyway. So I don't think you can never worry too much about injuries as part of the game. It's unfortunate. I mean, I don't know whether you can just look at this one as a fitness sort of exercise, because I think at this stage of pre-season, you're looking to have maybe won your last 2 or 3 games and have started building some momentum in terms of performance and results to go into that Chelsea game. You wouldn't really want to not approach this one wanting to win it necessarily and taking your eye off the ball and losing it 2 or 3-0 the week before the season's about to start. I think it's actually a really good friendly. I mean, it's a game I'm going to. Actually, I'm going to the game, so I think it's a really good friendly for United to have at that stage. I think it's a good team to play the week before they're about to play Chelsea. I'm not saying that AC Milan are necessarily as good as Chelsea, but it's better than playing someone like Yeovil Town and beating them 5-6-0 and not learning anything from the game. So I think it's a good stepping stone to go into that first game of the season. So in that regard, I think it's worked out quite well. With the winning the silverware, I mean, the International Champions Cup, you probably know more than me. The structure of it is quite interesting. I think some teams play more games than others. Obviously, not everybody plays the same teams. I think it depends on how many goals you score. So they may even go into that game with every chance of winning it or no chance at all of winning it. So we'll just have to see. But I think definitely if they can win it going into that game, I think they'll go all out to do it because, we're a club that likes to win trophies. So this one's no different.
Thank you. So now, finally, our last set of predictions. For me, I think AC Milan are completely in disarray, and they're losing Bakayoko. They don't look like they're signing anyone in particular. They've got players coming back from loan who are out of favour. I think it's going to be quite a comfortable 3-0 win. Maybe 3-1 if Piatek gets a shout.
I have to agree with you there. And as Joe said, I think this game is going to be a lot about momentum coming into the season. And I saw Ollie's interview where he said that this AC Milan game will be the last game where he will more than likely start with the team that he's seeing as a team to start for Chelsea. So I think it's going to be a game that United will take probably the most serious out of the whole preseason. And it's also a game that I hope that we will see a centre back pairing of Twanzebe and Lindelof going into the season. I really hope that that's what it's going to look like. So I think it's going to be a good game. I think it's going to be a Rashford's game, and I think it's going to be a 3-0 win as well.
Yeah, I agree with you too. I think I've got a funny feeling United will come into this knowing that they need a good result, knowing that they want a good result, knowing that it's the last game of pre-season. I think it's obviously on British soil, although not at home. I know that, but I just think they're a bit in front of Milan, well, they're quite a long way in front of Milan, and I just think they'll end the pre-season on a high. So I'm going to go for 3-0 as well. I think that's going to be the score.
I'm going for a slightly boring game. I'll go for a 4-2 win to United.
All right, thank you. There is actually one thing before we finish I want to ask. There's been a lot of, on Twitter certainly, there's been a lot of complaining United fans about how Ollie hasn't fulfilled his promises of cutting players from the club. And a lot of players, we talked about them, Phil Jones, Alexis Sanchez, Nemanja Matic, Marcus Rojo, Chris Smalling. We talked about a whole host of players that could leave the club. Do you think that what he's trying to do is play pre-season, see who he trusts, and then make decisions from there? Or do you think he's just been denied the chance to sign these players, sell these players, because then, as a result, Woodward would have to, use the Glazers' money to buy better players?
I think it might be a little bit of both, and then a case of a little bit of a damage limitations that he has. Even if the team maybe tried to call around or put them on the transfer list, and then there's just not enough teams that are either interested in players like Jones or Smalling, or there's no teams interested in taking on Sanchez's wage. So I think that that could be a part of it, and then the other part is like Ollie is just like, okay, well, I'm here, I have them, so let's see what happens in preseason, and maybe one of them can get into a run of form or something and be useful. But another thing is that when we, like as we mentioned in the last podcast, that when we do sell players, we don't really rush to replace any of them, and like as bad as Jones or something like Jones has been, that like unreliable, he would still need replacing in terms of squad depth. So I don't know, it's confusing, especially after what Ollie said after the Everton game, that there is a lot of players that won't be here to succeed with him next season, but nobody has left except for 2 players that were actually quite useful in the long term of things. So I don't know, it's interesting. I'm looking forward to see. And the transfer window in the Premier League closes the earliest too, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I think for me, I think by now maybe you'd have hoped that Ollie maybe in that 6 months he was in charge would have been able to work out who he could trust and who he couldn't. I mean, I will give you the benefit of the doubt and say that this is pre-season, so this is where he's going to try and install his way of playing on the players. So maybe he wants to give them another chance, looking at them playing his style of football. But if I was a betting man, I would say that Ollie would be probably quite disappointed so far with the outgoings at United, but it's no surprise. I mean, I saw a report yesterday where they're asking for £25 million for Marcus Rojo. I mean, they've gone from one extreme to another. I used to think that United used to let some of their players go on the cheap. I remember a few seasons ago they let someone like Johnny Evans go for £6 million.
Nani left for nothing either.
Yeah, exactly. And you're looking at Johnny Evans a season 2 later, teams are on about paying 20 million for him, teams including Arsenal and Man City. So, but now they seem to have gone from one extreme to another, and some of the transfer fee they're demanding of players, like the 25 million for Rocco, just seems a bit silly for me. I just don't get a lot of what they're trying to do in the transfer market. But Ollie's also in a difficult situation because you can't let too many players go if you're not going to sign too many. So he's got to think about numbers as well. Obviously, it's all those players you listed off that could have potentially left. that's all well and good if you can replace them with 3 or 4 quality signings. And, you know, we've been linked with no end of players. I mean, I think we're over 100 players we've been linked with this summer, but actual, you know, genuine interest in players and players that they're actually trying to do a deal for. You know, I think we'll be fortunate if we see 2 or 3 more come to the. I think that will be the maximum. I can't see us signing more than 2 or 3 more players this window. And that, but again, that depends on whether we lose people like Pogba and Lukaku. If we lose those players, then you would hope that maybe a couple more may come in, and the money that you generate from that will obviously help those incomings.
I feel it's all down to lack of plan, as in 2 months or 3 months before the season begins, everyone needs to sit down and formulate a flow chart as to who are they going to sell first, or who are they going to buy first and then sell, and how much do they value each player at realistically. Because now I don't know if they're waiting to sign a centre back and then sell our deadwood, or first sell our deadwood, get cash, and then sign a centre back, because both ways make sense and it doesn't look like United are going either way. Like Joe said, I read the article about United valuing Rojo at 25 million. To put that into perspective, Barca sold Luka Dean to Everton for 20 million. So why would any club want to pay 25 million for Rojo? And I think with the whole banter thing now, it comes down to no club wants to be associated with a player like Phil Jones, because they might ultimately end up being the laughing stock of whatever, the internet, whatever. That could be one reason. But again, I think it's all down to a lack of plan from the upper hierarchy.
Thanks, guys. And that is unfortunately all we have time for. Thanks for listening, and thanks to Arion, Suraj, and Joe for joining me today. Next week we will be analysing the current United crop and whether they should be considered successes or flops. If you have any questions or any topics you would like for us to cover, then please comment below on the video or on the Twitter or Facebook posts. And if you've enjoyed this, please like the video, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Twitter for all of our content.